We're back once again with a brand new Robot Wars review. This one is another review of Robot Wars Series 2. This time, it's Heat D. And let me tell you, this one, for Series 2, in my opinion, was a pretty packed series with recognizable robots pretty much throughout. Well, let's not waste any time and let's get into it. Now, the intro to this episode is strange. We went from a Monty Python reference to the god of love, Venus, so that we could then go to the god of war, Mars, because war? Robot Wars! Gosh, Craig, that was a stretch. But let's not worry, because it's time to look at the contestants. Now, first out is a Robot Wars legend. It's Razor! A crusher so legendary, people still speak of it all these years later. In fact, when I talk about robots like Quantum, for instance, I usually end up saying how it's the modern day equivalent to a robot like Razor. How we've not really had a crusher so effective since those days. Razor came in with that piercing claw in Series 2, weighing in at 78.8 kilograms, and it truly is a visual wonder. Bug comes out next and is a rather unique robot. It's a segmented machine, like a clusterbot, except both halves are forced together. So think like how Red Devil could be taken apart, yet all parts could work independently. Despite this, the only real weapon is the circular saw at the front, and weighing in at just 53 kilograms, it definitely wasn't going to be the most competitive. Inquisitor is out next with a chainsaw at the front and flails at the back, as well as some front spikes as well. Safe to say, Inquisitor was trying its best to be ready for battle here. Weighing just 64.5 kilograms, however, did have me wondering how effective this all would be in reality. Body Hammer would be out next, returning from Series 1. Body Hammer this time, instead of having a hammer, has a small lifter and a circular saw. Weighing 77 kilograms, I reckon it could still be decently competitive if it got to the fight grounds this season. Behemoth comes out next. One of the longest surviving robot designs, this 1998 robot has evolved over the years, resulting in it still competing nowadays. Almost like, 26 years later? It's honestly kind of crazy, really, that Behemoth has managed to go on this long. And it's one of the many reasons why Behemoth is easily one of my favourite robots of all time. If I ever make that top 10 list, Behemoth almost certainly is going to get a place on that list. So even though I wasn't sure how it would do this season, I was still excited to see it. It is rather small in this iteration, evidenced when it's shown to only weigh 67.7 kilograms. Elvis is another Series 1 return for this season. Now with a front flipper and a rear saw, the robot weighs 83 kilograms. There's not much more to say really, just look at it. First up as always is the Gauntlet, and Bug continues to be rather unique by being one of the earlier robots to take the right path. Pretty much no one has done that so far. Like I expected, they did struggle though. Maybe not as much as most, but still. And it isn't helped when Shunt immediately starts bullying them. The moment they get free, they clumsily end up in the fence near the middle, where Sergeant Bash tries to play a hairdresser with their little hairdryer. It's just a shame that hairdryer has fire coming out of it. The fire's so hot that in fact that they show afterwards that some of the pieces of the bots got soldered together, like parts that aren't supposed to be doing that. Still, ending with 8.4 meters, it's not a bad score, and it's pretty likely that they'd end up being safe. Spoiler alert, they would be. Behemoth is up next, and it takes the center path, and while not bulldozing through, Behemoth goes through, and the performance here is, as I typically would expect from Behemoth. While not being the most powerful and bombastic, it's a perfectly capable, generally reliable machine that, when everything works as it should, has little issues in dealing with the obstacles that Robot Wars confronts it with. Now, as they pass over the seesaw, they end up bumping into Sergeant Bash, though when Bash backs away, Behemoth rushes to the finish, undeterred even when Shunt rammed into them. Completing the run means Behemoth is guaranteed to make it to the second round. It was Body Hammer's turn next, whose most notable addition to me isn't the weapons, but the inclusion of David Gribble to the team. David Gribble was someone who would go on to become known as one of the best drivers in Robot Wars, driving what would become a legendary robot in Pussycat. Obviously, we'll get to Pussycat when we get to Pussycat. It's not going to be this series of reviews, at least. But safe to say that David Gribble knows what he's doing when driving a robot. Or at least does do in later heats, so let's get into it. They end up going the right way, but unfortunately, they end up getting stuck. This is why most robots don't go this path, because if you're low to the ground, as you should be when making a robot 9 times out of 10, unless you're going for a huge type design, you'll end up getting stuck in these kinds of situations. And it requires Kill-A-Lot to get them unstuck. Although, Kill-A-Lot isn't quite so helpful here, as they end up getting shoved onto the other side with the angle grinders getting stuck again. With that, Body Hammer's run is very sad, ending with just 3 meters. Razor is up next, and for a Series 2 robot, this is a beauty of engineering. It looks so well put together. It ends up going down the right path as well. I wonder if there was just the producers being like, man, no one's going down the right-hand path, and everyone just felt bad about that, so they went down it. Although for them it'd be their left-hand path, but you get what I mean. It's the right hand for us. Anyway, point is, they end up getting through, though they do have some issues at the beginning, as to be expected, but they end up really making up for it, as in an impressive display, they go into shunt and push the shunt all the way to the finish line. Even in Series 2, Razor was making it clear that they were going to make their mark here in Robot Wars, getting a cheer as they called Shunt a wuss, and honestly, it's a pretty impressive performance. Like, we've seen a few robots now that have shown definitively that they're going to start making a mark here. I remember Chaos managing to pull against Dead Metal pretty easily, but like, this itself was pretty impressive. Again, being able to out-push the house robots is really quite impressive, really. And it was only a sign of things to come. Inquisitor comes out next. In a shocker, it seems almost... Inquisitor comes out next and, again, takes the right path. They get past with possibly the least issue of all, though they get waltzed into the fence by Shunt, who played them like a fiddle. Once they got past the dizziness, however, they did manage to make it to the finish, ensuring that they will join Behemoth and Razor in the next round. Elvis tenderly approaches the brick wall in their run, barely making a dent until the flipper knocks the wall over. And it seems like everyone is just letting Elvis potter around by itself. It's honestly a little pathetic, really, because they never get past the brick wall. Like, I need you to understand, the brick wall has been dismantled. It's on the ground. Literally, all Elvis would have to do is, like, push a brick or two at this point. Not even a brick or two that's been piled on top of each other. Just a brick or two on the floor. And it can't do that! It has to be one of the worst runs in the gauntlet. Maybe not in terms of distance, but, when you watch these, like, man, this was bad. At least from the heavyweights, this was bad. Still, sadly, with 3.7 meters, they do make it through, meaning that Body Hammer is out. Now, I am a little sad to see Body Hammer go out this quickly, but at the same time, I'm not too sad. Don't get me wrong, Body Hammer is pretty good, a robot, but it's not a robot that had me going... But in a heat with robots like Behemoth and Razor, it definitely isn't a robot that I was clamoring to see. Plus, the team would come out with a much better robot once Pussycat comes around, so, I'm just kind of waiting for that. Now, in the second round is football, or soccer if you're a BattleBots fan, where the contenders have to push the ball into the goal, getting past Sergeant Bash on the pitch and the goalie, Dead Metal. To add further difficulty, the ball has metal studs all over, meaning this ball will not go in a straight line. Razor rushes fourth at the beginning, and with some horns on the side, they easily get to the goal, but they're stopped by Dead Metal. Dead Metal, though, ends up pushing it the rest of the way, meaning that Razor is through with the first goal. Millie Anbug next ends up getting the ball close to the goal, the pincers helping to corral it most of the way there, but Elvis stops them from continuing as they nearly flip the robot over, where Sergeant Bash then sets Millie Anbug on fire again. Behemoth meanwhile takes advantage. With little attachments to the scoop, they easily get the ball to the goal. Clearly, Behemoth and Razor are setting themselves apart here in this heat. They are doing exceptionally well, in my opinion. Inquisitor is next to score as Dead Metal ends up just roaming away from the goal. Come on now, that's ridiculous. It is kind of funny though, and I can't help but like Inquisitor a bit. It may not be the most competitive design, but it is fun to look at, and it was funny to watch them just score a free goal. It's down to Elvis and Millianbug, and it's honestly a little sad at this point, as both robots don't get near the ball. Elvis because I just assume it's blind at this point, and poor Millie because the bug is barely functioning, which is not helped by Bash and Dead Metal ganging up on them. Here's the thing though, even then Elvis can't score. There is literally nothing stopping them, and they can't do it. Eventually the house robots just end up helping them, with Bash holding Elvis's hand to the goal, like, come on, this way, that's it, we're nearly there, yeah, you did it! And Dead Metal actually making the kick into the goal. Elvis survives, even if it's only on life support, and sadly, poor cute Millianbug is out. Gosh, I mean, I get it, Millianbug broke down, and that's the only way it can get worse than the performance Elvis was giving, but my god. When you've got Behemoth and Razor, two future legends of Robot Wars, who are already showing that they've got the basic groundwork down, and they're just steamrolling through, and even Inquisitor's doing pretty well for itself, then you just have Elvis and Millianbug who are just, well, I mean, I guess they're here. That's about it. Oh man, it just really is a stark contrast. Finally though, we're onto the fight rounds, and I was excited with the robots involved. Probably competitively, these are some of the best robots we could have gotten in this heat. With the only real change I would have maybe given was like swap out Elvis for like Body Hammer or something, but still, this is pretty good. First up is Razor versus Inquisitor. Inquisitor turns flails first, but Razor easily ignores the chains, pinning them against the wall where the flail gets plucked off with ease. Shunt and Matilda then come in, attacking Inquisitor from the side as Razor buckles the backside of the armour. And I don't just mean buckles it, I mean there is no back armour when they're done. The armour easily bends and tears as Razor pierces down. Still, despite this extensive damage, Inquisitor manages to drive away, with seemingly nothing too vital being attacked. Meanwhile though, Razor's drive has stopped working suddenly. Just like that, the house robots gang up on Razor, tipping them over. This is before Razor got their Shreemech, so that was that for Razor, with them being set on fire at the end it seems. This was a shocker that I remember the first time I saw this genuinely surprised me. It is a shame to see Razor go out like this, but it is always exciting when upset wins like this can happen, and I don't know why, but it's just fun to see Inquisitor getting this weird luck in a fight that 9 times out of 10 it would have had no chance in. I love seeing stuff like that, honestly, because it's always nice when things aren't so certain in robot combat. The next fight was between Elvis and Behemoth. Now Behemoth rushes over with Elvis barely moving, but in terms of attacks, Elvis does get initially the better, with Behemoth coming in with their scoop raised, meaning that the flipper easily gets under, and then Elvis turning around and getting some sparks in with the rear saw. Behemoth does rebound, however, lifting them with the scoop and pushing them around before the house robots gang up on the King of Rock. Safe to say Elvis was dead on arrival, and as the rest of the fight was just a prolonged beatdown from the house robots. Admittedly, this really wasn't that exciting a fight. I kind of started tuning out mentally, as it was just Elvis not doing much, getting shoved into the house robots, and then the house robots just bully it for the rest of the fight. I don't know what to tell you. Now, before the heat final, I do have to mention, we got a You Bang the Mouse cameo! Woo! Okay, in all seriousness, despite how bad the damage was, Inquisitor miraculously was repaired enough to battle, which I honestly imagine would have been tough. In Series 2, preparations can't have been as high as we would come to expect. You know, You know, most of the time I imagine it was a miracle if the robot was just working at all. So to see the amount of damage Razor did, I imagine they had to work pretty dang hard to get Inquisitor ready. Anyway though, it's time for the Heat Final, Behemoth versus Inquisitor. Now had I not seen this heat before, I would have expected one half of this Heat Final, but not the other. Still, I was excited. Behemoth and Inquisitor rush into each other, with Behemoth sending Inquisitor into the spikes. Then there's a push back and forth, with Behemoth questionably charging with a scoop raised again. Undoubtedly, they do better if they got their scoop under the robot, but I imagine they didn't realise that at the time. Still, they managed to get Inquisitor over to Sir Killalot, who plucks off that flail once again with ease, like it's butter. Behemoth then lifts Inquisitor over to the PPZ, where the house robots come in and tip Inquisitor over, meaning Behemoth wins the Heat Final. Honestly, not a bad fight all things considered. Like, there wasn't really a whole lot that Inquisitor was going to be able to do, and I was really happy to see Behemoth win. Behemoth gets a really bad string of bad luck throughout Robot Wars, as you'll come to see as I do these reviews. And it's always been a painful thing, because as a fan of Behemoth, I know Behemoth is a good robot. Like, design-wise, it is functionally extremely sound. It's just it always seemed to run into technical problems or some other hiccup. But here tonight, Behemoth got to show itself off, reaching the Heat Final, beating the Heat Final, and moving on. Which is honestly so exciting to see, and overall, I'll admit I quite like this heat. I don't know what it was about this heat. I think this heat was just balanced just right. You know, the house robots got involved without getting too involved in my opinion, except for the Elvis bit, but to be quite honest with you, Elvis bloody needed it. Stuff like the Elvis stuff was so bad that apart from like the overly long bit at the end with that fight, I did find it amusing. Like, Elvis was just so bad it was funny. Which is nothing against the team. The robot from a design perspective looked pretty solid, it's just something went horribly wrong during the heat. And then, you know, of course you had other classic designs like Millie Ann Bug, you had a pretty good run from Inquisitor, and legendary performances from Razor and Behemoth. It all culminated in what I felt was a pretty nice heat for the time. With that all being said, should you check it out? Honestly, I'd recommend it. Now, there's actually a little update that I've got to give. At the time of recording, it turns out that Mech Plus is no longer going to be free to view, which is a massive shame. I'm really disappointed about that, but at the same time, I did kind of see it coming. Thankfully, last I checked, Mech Plus is £20 a year, which is really not much for a subscription. So, if you want to see Robot Wars in the highest quality it's ever been in, and you want to watch techno games and all that other stuff, £20 a year isn't exactly the end of the world, and I'd honestly highly recommend it. And I'd recommend checking this episode out. Quite honestly, for 1998, this really wasn't too bad. It was decently entertaining. And I just recommend checking out Mech Plus in general, getting to see, you know, every episode of Robot Wars, and they're actually adding more like the international seasons as well. Just generally a highly recommended subscription service in my opinion. A highly recommended streaming service in my opinion. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to show that support by leaving a like on the video. If you enjoyed, then be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos on the channel. I'm trying to upload a bunch of different videos at the moment. Reviews of Robot Wars, classic BattleBots, King of Bots. I've got a review that I'm currently working on to do with BattleBots Proving Ground. It's all going to be exciting, and I hope that you could join for the ride. If you want to extra show your support, I also have memberships which give you access to custom emotes as well as members-only videos. Of course, you don't have to. Again, just tuning in actually does help out quite a bit. And if you share the video around, that really does help me out a lot. Like, I've seen videos get shared, and that genuinely does a lot. Anyway, again, I'll stop waffling. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys!